Okay, there's a lot going on in the news here at home in the United States and abroad. President Trump seems to be trying to wrangle in Israel and Iran and Russia and Ukraine and NATO, as well as make sure that the US economy is growing. To help me go through all this, I have a special guest, Martin Armstrong. Martin, thank you for joining me.
Well, thank you for inviting me in these trying times that we live in.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Let me give my audience some background. Martin is a trends forecaster. He's also a studier of world economics, geopolitical issues, and he has a YouTube channel as well as I do, and I'll make sure to put a link down below. I wanted to get your thoughts on this. Why do you believe President Trump is having such a hard time bringing the Russia-Ukraine war to an end? And do you see this more as Putin of Russia's fault or NATO of Europe's fault?
No, it's NATO's fault. The EU is kind of really falling apart. Um, Czechoslovakia, it broke up into Czech Republic and Slovakia. All right, Yugoslavia broke up, Serbia, Croatia. These, you have to understand that that area had been conquered by the Ottoman Empire. So besides the ethnic differences that you have Muslims, you have Orthodox Christians, you have Western Christians. They all just don't get along with each other. I mean, it's just been that way from a long time. We had a conference in Greece, and our one employee from Kiev, she refused to fly back the quickest way because that was a stop in Moscow. Uh, so I mean, this ethnic hatred in throughout that entire region it's just systemic, and the only solution to Ukraine was to divide it, allow the Donbass to split. They're mostly Russians. Crimea, you don't find any Ukrainians there. 15% of the population are actually Tartars from the old Mongol invasion, right? So, um, and they speak Russian. Uh, that area has been part of Russia for a long time. Khrushchev's successor, Brezhnev, was born there. Um, so this is like the mix that you have there. Europe, on top of it, is falling apart. And whenever you get a government that is at risk, they always need to blame some external enemy.
Is Europe keeping this war going because they really hate and fear Russia, or is it to mask their economies are shrinking and that they're actually losing their cultural identity because they're taking in so many foreign residents?
Yeah, it's all of the above. You had them first with the COVID lockdowns. All right. Then you came in with the climate change nonsense. Then on top of that, you put in the sanctions against Russia. All right. That's kind of like, I'm going to shoot myself in the foot to show you I'm serious. And if you don't back off, I'm going to shoot you in the foot. Um, their energy costs soared by 300%. The German economy has shrunk, and I'm not talking about a recession. I'm talking about the number of jobs is actually declined because between COVID, climate change, and then sanctions on energy, etc., the number of actual jobs has declined. Then you probably saw the video clips of tens of thousands of people protesting at Volkswagen. Because then you have the climate change. Oh, you can't produce those kind of cars. You have to go to electric. So uh, these people that come up with these ideas, they have no real alternative. Uh, you know, you we had our climate czar telling the miners, um, we're going to shut down your coal mines. Go learn how to make solar panels. Um, there's no real alternative. Nobody thinks about the exit strategy on any of this stuff. So this is what's tearing really Europe apart economically. If you look at their economic growth, it's a fraction of the United States. I mean, I'm talking about for the last 30 years. And so it's just a failed system and highly socialistic. Germany was very scared of hyperinflation and stuff. So if you look at it, you'll see that the
Bless you.
The average net worth of a German is less than that of an Italian. Yet Germany's the strongest economy and 25% of the EU.
Wow.
All of these ideas have seriously hurt the European economy. So they need an external enemy. And to answer your question directly, the former Prime Minister of Estonia, Kalas, who's now head of security in the EU. I mean, she actually came out, and this is I've got tapes of it. She said Russia's too big and needs to be broken up. Then when she was a minister there in charge of foreign policy for the EU, and Trump was going to go talk to Putin, and she outright said, "I don't care what agreements they have, we're not going to follow it." So to be fair, if I was Putin, would I agree to any peace deal? No. When you have this kind of attitude, I had direct sources in both the Vienna so-called peace conference a couple of months ago. I got a call afterwards, and they said it's got nothing to do with peace. It's everybody's preparing for war. I got the same message again just from this NATO meeting. Trump did say, I don't know what's out in the news because I haven't really read any on the news yet. This just comes from direct sources, but that Trump had looked at Article 5, and it is voluntary. It's not mandatory. And he said, look, we'll provide weapons, we'll provide, intelligence, but we're not sending boots on the ground. And that's correct. And I mean, I do talk to people in DC. And a couple of months ago, I told them, I said, look, in my opinion, you better get out of NATO because they're going to try and do a false flag and say that Russia did something and therefore we have to send our troops over. And to my surprise, they actually said, you're right, we know.
I mean, would you say, President Trump threatens to withhold resources. Now NATO, Europe, Ukraine, they say we want to come to the peace table, but then they do this military drone attack deep into Russia. They then blow up the Crimea bridge. Aren't those all really to provoke Russia and keep the war going?
Look, if we look at this objectively, Putin has put down so many red lines. Oh, if you give them missiles and they shoot into Russia, that's going to cause it. The EU has and NATO have crossed every single line he puts down, praying that he's going to attack something in NATO. And Putin understands what's going on now. And he keeps trying not to take the bait. I mean, it's even come out that from Ukrainian military sources, they were told to go to the border. They thought they were only going to defend the border, and then they were told to invade Russia into the Kerch region. That came from MI6 out of Britain. You have Boris Johnson, who's a notorious neocon. There was a peace deal on the table. He hopped on the plane, went over, and told Zelensky he wasn't allowed to sign it. The death toll for Ukrainians was about 130,000 at the time. Now it's well over 1 million. And he even, it was published on the front page of the Nordic News. He blatantly came out and said Britain is in a proxy war with Russia. I mean, it's when he went over and said no peace, that made the front pages of Pravda in Ukraine. And Ukrainians I speak to, they said, are we allowed to have peace in our own country without permission from London?
I guess not.
It's Zelensky won't have any elections. Why? After the attempted assassination on him last May, he fired his bodyguards. He doesn't trust Ukrainians anymore, and they're basically American and Brits. He kidnaps people off the street and sends them to the front line. I mean, there's videos of him even sending people with Down syndrome. I mean, this is not a war for Ukraine. And the Ukrainian people, he won't go to election because he knows he would lose.
Yeah.
And nobody cares about the Ukrainian people. You had Lindsey Graham in a meeting bragging, this is the best money we ever spent to kill Russians.
Yeah, because it's the best of both worlds, right? It's like we get to send all of this money to the military-industrial complex, but we don't have to send letters that your son or daughter died in a foreign war.
There's nothing to gain out of this. All right, this is, Russia, even Margaret Thatcher, and you can probably see it on YouTube. She even came out and said, Russia is the richest country in the world. All right, they have all the natural resources. They have, gold, diamonds, oil, timber. It's estimated their natural resources are worth about 75 trillion, which is twice the U.S. national debt. And that's why the Swedes tried to conquer it, and I was back with Peter the Great defending Russia, Hitler, Napoleon. I guess they think, okay, this time we'll win, in France, I'm told that, basically they call Macron the petite Napoleon. And these people think that they can just send off the people in Eastern, Europe against Russia. And I've actually heard them, say that they don't care if they die. What the hell? They were all communists before anyhow. This is the attitude.
Wow.
I mean, if anybody cared about Ukraine, why would you keep pushing it to what are they fighting for?
I mean, I'm not going to lie. There's times as I study this, it seems like Trump's the only one that seems to want to end this. But then, Martin, why doesn't he just cut off taxpayer money? Is it because of his agreement with NATO? Is it because of a PR battle? Is it because he maybe wants the underdog to win? I don't know. It just, to me, when he threatened to cut it off and they cut off money and weapons for about a week, all of a sudden, almost all of Europe wanted to go to peace. But then he started things back up again, and then they wanted to go to war again. So why not just cut off our money?
Look, I agree. I think he's. I was told, and I did pass on this information, that the natural resource, the rare earth deal, that was supposed to be signed in Kiev. Boris Johnson, again, hopped on the plane, went over to Ukraine, told Zelensky to insist he had to do it at the White House. And it was a setup and it was to embarrass Trump to force him to keep the money going. And I have very good sources. I passed it on. I said, hey, and I think later on, I think Rubio came out and confirmed that it was supposed to be in Kiev. And at the last minute, Zelensky insisted upon there. And so that's why everybody was there. They knew what it was going to be. They knew Zelensky was going to try and embarrass Trump to keep the money going. And it turned into a real shit fight.
Yeah.
I mean, this is what's Europe needs the war, because without the war, it's going to fall apart. And when it falls apart, all these people with their pensions, and when I was explaining that they never consolidated the debt, banks have to use government debt for reserves. And we saw it in 2010 when Greece got into trouble. What happened? Immediately, the traders started saying, who's next? Oh, Spain. Okay. This is the problem. One EU country gets in trouble, it turns into a contagion throughout all of Europe. Then they're going to have to look at, oh, well, which banks hold the most? Because if that country gets into trouble, what happens? You don't have a unified reserve for the banks themselves.
You mentioned Spain being the one they predicted to fall. Is this why Spain just publicly said we're not going to put 5% into NATO? We don't have the money for it.
No, yeah, they don't have the money. When you look at the economics of this, we spend 1.9% of GDP on interest to keep rolling the debt. Britain is at about 3.5. Italy's about 3.9. The worst, get a lot of these people talking about, oh, BRICS, it's going to deplace the dollar and all that. The worst is Brazil at 8.5%. People have no idea, just talking to, propaganda and stuff like that. But Europe is really a basket case. And they need this war in order to retain the government. They have no other plan. If they don't have this war, what happens? You get default, banking crisis. People are going to be taking their pitchforks and storming the parliament. All right. On top of that, you got the migrant crisis. We had a migrant crisis in the 1840s, and that was when the Irish came. Because, you had Andrew Jackson shut down the Bank of the United States. That led to the Panic of 1837. And then, so the 1840s is called the hard times. That's when the Irish were coming over, and it ended up, they created the Navitus movement. So, okay, fine, I'm coming in from Ireland. I'm dead broke. I'll work for $2 less an hour than the other guy. So it turns into a fight for jobs. All right, so that, you can look it up. It turned into gun battles on the streets of Philadelphia in 1844.
Wow.
All right. So this is where Europe stands. Just look at Newsom out of California. Oh, these, and he actually has the audacity to say, oh, these are taxpayers. Really? I'm an employer. I cannot hire somebody who's not an American citizen. I mean, they have to have a 5 on them. I got to take out their taxes, and they have to have a social security number. We just went through an audit, and what they're doing is they're coming in and auditing to see if you're hiring contract employees. So a contract employee, you're not collecting their taxes for them. And so I don't have to add to I said, we don't have any contract employees. Doesn't matter what I say. They still had to go through everything. Accountants got to get involved to see we didn't have any. But this is what they're auditing now. Because you would have an illegal alien. Oh, he's a contract employee because he doesn't have Social Security.
Okay.
All right. So, and I just went through an audit for that. So I now know what they're actually doing. So how can these people, Newsom stands up and says, oh, they're taxpayers. Really? How? All right. They don't have to pay taxes if they're a contract employee. All right. If they're working for somebody, they have to have a Social Security number. I can't hire anybody that's not. And, they just get so insulting with all this stuff. Oh, voter ID, oh, that's because the blacks might not have it. Really? So you're saying somebody like Obama is not intelligent enough to have an ID? I mean, you're just insulting the black community. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
I have 2 black employees that work for me. They have ID. I mean, obviously, they drive to work.
They got bank accounts, cars.
Yeah, I mean,
they go to the grocery store.
I mean, it's just completely absurd, some of the stuff that these people have been saying.
Yeah.
It's very insulting. And it's just, this is where we're at, unfortunately.
Yeah. Let me switch gears with you away from Europe over to the Middle East. It's been an emotional week with the NATO meeting, everything going on in DC, the bombing of Iran, Israel, the ceasefire, all of that. Do you believe that Trump is like trying to navigate all of these landmines in order to remain the president that doesn't get us into war? He's trying to remain a peacetime president.
Well, I did go to dinner at Mar-a-Lago when he was president the first time in March of 2020. And that is when he actually did impress me. He said that he wanted to pull the troops out of Afghanistan, but it was the reason. He said he was tired of writing letters that your son died for God and country. And to quote him, he said, what are we doing there? They've been fighting over borders for 1,000 years. What difference are we going to make? And indeed, we were there for 20 years. What difference do we make? None of it. So I knew largely where he really did stand. And I also had direct contact with RFK. And I knew he was against war. And that's one of the main reasons why he did join with Trump. I had conversation with him, and he said, how would you solve the Ukrainian war? So I know where they actually stood. Trump did his best to get rid of a lot of neocons. I don't think he quite understands that the intelligence agencies are littered with them. And on top of that, Netanyahu is a dyed-in-the-wool neocon. I grew up in the Philadelphia area, so I knew Bill Kristol. His father's the one that started the neocon movement, Irving. Taught at Penn in Philly. Netanyahu went to school in Philadelphia. All right, he used to hang out with the Kristol's family for dinners. All right, so I know where his mindset is. That's why his polls in Israel were down like 29%. Personally, I believe his motive is, I think he's snuckered Trump into this. He faced a no confidence vote and won only by 2 votes. The very next day, he started the war on Iran. Now, he knew he could not attack the nuclear facilities. Yet they use that as the excuse. This is kind of like weapons of mass destruction nonsense. Okay. What did he really do? He went to kill all the heads of the government. It's the same strategy he did against Hamas, the same strategy he used with Hezbollah. It's to decapitate your opponent. So this was about regime change. And Trump did step in and said, no, do not kill the Ayatollah. I think Netanyahu is kind of an idiot. Again, my experience with these neocons, I mean, I had arguments with Bill Kristol back in the 90s. And he said, if we remove Saddam Hussein, Assad, and Gaddafi, we'll bring peace to the Middle East. And I said, you're an idiot. Have you ever been there? First of all, when the Ottoman Empire collapsed, we drew these borders, not them. All right. If you've ever been there, they don't see themselves as all Iraqis or Syrians, etc. It's still tribal. All right. It's Sunni versus Shiite versus Kurd. They have not assimilated. So, to a large extent, you did need dictators like this because they stopped them all from killing each other. Yeah. Once you remove Saddam Hussein, what did you get? You got ISIS chopping off people's heads and stuff like that. You can look on YouTube. If you think I'm exaggerating, even Tony Blair did his apology after the fall of Iraq. It's on YouTube. And he said that they thought they were freeing these people from Saddam, which was the neocon sales point. And he says, we didn't realize we'd be subjecting them to more sectarian violence afterwards. These people have no exit strategy. It's like Vietnam. Okay, you get us in. How do you get out?
Yeah.
Where's the end game? Afghanistan, same thing.
Yeah. Do you think this is why Trump refused to assassinate Khamenei, the supreme leader? He didn't want regime change to be from assassination, making him a martyr. It would have to be the people doing it themselves.
Yeah, look, this would be religion. Okay, this is not like taking out Fidel Castro. All right. When he's the leader of the Shiites, 30% on average in Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Jordan are Shiite. You do that, it'd be kind of like, the Protestants going down and assassinating the Pope. Mm. When you get religion in it, it takes on a different flavor. I don't know what else you call it. Look, even Ukraine, all right, it's ethnic hatred. But eventually you can settle, all right, fine. Here's the border. You stay on your side, I stay on my side. But with religion, you don't get that. You just look at the Protestant Reformation. Ireland's still divided, Protestant versus, I've been to Bavaria, which is Catholic, and they said, oh, tomorrow is a holiday. I said, what's the holiday? Oh, we won the war. I said, which war are we celebrating? And they said, oh, we beat Prussia, which were Protestant. Okay. You go to England, and they still call Catholics papes, and that's from 1649. Religion just takes a different, it's probably the worst of all. I mean, you can have, war for conquest, like, Alexander the Great, but difference was that the soldiers shared in the spoils. he couldn't say, okay, we're going to go take out this country. What are we going to get out of it? Oh, nothing. You know, then they were not going to follow him. They stopped it they forced him to turn back from going into India. But you have the ethnic battles, which are more like the Hatfields versus McCoy type thing. And then you got religion. And religion is, I don't see where there is ever, it just goes to the very end.
Netanyahu seemed willing to kill the supreme leader. Trump
Oh, yeah.
seemed very unwilling. Maybe, I mean, he just did this successful Middle East tour. He's trying to do the Abraham Accords. I think he didn't want to be known as the guy that killed the main religious person of Iran.
Yeah. Now, look, I mean, you do that, and Homeland Security has already put people on notice. Be careful, there are sleeper cells in the United States which will wake up. You'll see sectarian violence throughout all the major cities of Europe. This is not something that would be contained.
I mean, I'm looking at all the Muslim marching right now in New York City and other areas. I do believe there would have been a major rising up and a rebellion. I think Trump was wise to avoid that mess.
Yeah, that's why I say you deal with religion now. You bring it up around the globe. It's Ukraine tends to be okay. That's Ukrainians hate Russians. That's not going to spread to Connecticut, you know. It's just a different flavor, and so the Middle East one is far more dangerous globally per se, and I do think that Netanyahu his wings have got to be clipped. A lot of his polls are down. The highest poll I saw that he had was 29%. I mean, most Israelis, are not in favor of all this stuff. I mean, even in Ukraine, there was a Minsk agreement. All right, Donbass was supposed to be allowed to vote on their separation, the same as Czechoslovakia, Yugoslavia. All right, that was the reasonable solution. And then you had Merkel stand up and said, "Well, we never really intended to honor it. It was just to buy peace for time for Ukraine to build an army." So, I mean, that was the solution. How many millions of people have died already? And Europe has wanted this war, period, because they need it. And Netanyahu, I think, has stirred the hornet's nest. He thinks, okay, fine, taking out Hezbollah. He's won against Hamas. That's temporarily.
Yeah, they had like a 7-front war going at one point, and without the aid of the U.S. military and our donations to them, they would have been in real trouble. Martin, let me ask you this last question, and I appreciate you coming on. I mean, my big takeaway from my conversation with you is when things are going bad, when your reputation is bad, when your economy is failing, war is a great mask to distract people.
Yes. You always need the external enemy. Just look at Canada. All right. How did Carney win? It's Trump, Trump, Trump. He stayed away from any domestic problems. Trudeau was very much hated. Still the same Liberal Party. Carney was actually one of the founding members and signers there in Edinburgh for net zero on the climate change. I was actually just up in Alberta, and they probably will separate from Canada. About when I was up there less than a month ago, the polls were already about 60% to get out.
Wow.
I've done a lot of research in governments and rises and falls, etc. And I did a report which you can get off of our site. It's not hugely expensive. I think it's like, you know, $19 or $20 or something. But it surprised me. We did a research report analyzing all the revolutions from ancient times forward. And the question was, what percent of the population does it require to create a revolution domestically or separation? To my shock, it was less than 15%.
Wow.
Um,
A vocal minority.
it is. It's
Do you think do you think they'll go off on their own, or will they try to join the United States?
Well, there are three movements. One is saying to stay within Canada, but an independent sovereign like Quebec. Next one is basically to separate and become the 51st state in the U.S. The third one I suggested is you separate, but you become your own country. Eliminate personal income tax. Put a maximum tax of 15% on your corporations. And you will see just about everybody will be moving there unbelievably.
Wow.
If you're not, if there's no, the original founding fathers outlawed income tax. There was no direct taxation. That was in the Constitution. That's what the 16th Amendment overthrew. It was wrong, but that was a Marxist. However, they wanted to, Marxism, equality, all this nonsense. We're equal in rights, but not in talent. Like I've said many times before, you want to pay me $30 million to throw the football in the Super Bowl. I don't think I might do a good job, but we're all different at different things. And it's supply and demand. If there are very few people that can be a brain surgeon, they're going to get more than the guy that can drive a bus. Simple as that. It's supply and demand. So if they eliminated the income tax and just did a retail sales tax, my argument to them was that you will set the tone, and as everybody sees we return to normal, then maybe you can set the example and the rest of the world will start to follow. That was my hope.
Yeah, interesting. Martin, thank you very much for coming on. I know your time is valuable. If people want to follow you online or learn about your business, what links can I put for them to follow you?
They can go to armstrongeconomics.com. You don't have to put in any emails. We don't sell advertising, and we try to keep it open for a public service. We're not blocked anywhere in the world. People can watch it in China and everywhere. So everybody knows it's not biased. We try to just facts only, not be like the mainstream news.
Okay, I will put that direct link down below. Thank you so much for coming on. I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Well, thank you for inviting me.